Welcome, everyone. Thanks for tuning in again to the every other week update with Melissa Bova. We're glad that you're with us today, and I do want to remind you that the information you're going to receive today is for the benefit of our restaurants, hotels, travel and tourism partners, and other friends of PRLA. It is off the record. It's not designed for press purposes. We do entertain all press inquiries, but not at this time. So if you're with the press, please disconnect. And all the rest of you, again, stay connected, and thanks for being here. Melissa, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, hi everyone, welcome back. More federal updates than anything else of what we know and don't know, and then a few state updates as well. So let's kind of jump into where we are. Federally, bit of a hot mess, but I've been saying that now for, I think, going on 2 months. We still have a lot of battling and negotiating going on as it pertains to a federal infrastructure bill and a budget bill to get passed. We're currently looking at an infrastructure bill that the House is looking to be about $3.5 trillion. Moderates in the Senate, such as Senator Manchin and Senator Sinema, basically said, haha, 3.5 trillion isn't going to happen. So the infrastructure bill is really going to be key for all of us to keep an eye on as it pertains to how they're going to pay for 3.5 trillion. Is it going to be a significant amount of tax increases for all of you at the end of the day that would make our support a little less supportive, depending on how they decide to balance that? Part of that that's being bandied about is ending the employee retention tax credit a quarter early. That is key for all of you right now because the RRF has not been refunded, and that is up to $7,000 per employee per quarter. So it could amount to tens of thousands of dollars in tax savings in the fourth quarter of this year that you would no longer be able to use. We know that's really important in terms of trying to stay afloat during the latest variant situation across the country. So negotiations are continuing. They're still pretty far apart. And quite frankly, the scuttle is if Joe Biden can't get this infrastructure bill across the finish line, this is probably it in terms of some of his priorities moving forward as part of the first term of his presidency, at least until the elections at the end of next year. Some things that we are worried about and keeping an eye on as it pertains to the budget bill is incorporating a lot of things that are of concern for the industry. We have a lot of pushes to include provisions that would increase penalties for not allowing employees to unionize, making it easier to unionize, creating a better pathway for all of that. So far, because these bills are going to be financial only, the Senate parliamentarian is striking down a lot of these ideas, but we really are seeing an effort from the Democratic caucus to include a lot of items that they weren't able to get passed during the Trump administration. So that's all types of things that we're keeping an eye on as we're going forward with communications and working through these pieces of legislation. So please stay tuned because this could be something we need you to engage on. This could be something, as I said, while we want RRF to be refunded, is the trade so big and so negatively impactful to all of you that it's not worth it at the end of the day? And that's something we're really focused on as it pertains to infrastructure and the budget reconciliation bill. RRF, that every day we don't get RRF refunded, it gets harder. And so please, if you have not reached out to your congressperson and urged their support for this, you need to do so. RRF is not going to be included in the infrastructure bill. I did let you all know this last week or 2 weeks ago, I guess, on the webinar. At the end of the day, Speaker Pelosi, Senator Schumer, the Biden administration don't want anything COVID related as part of the infrastructure and budget bill right now. Just hard stop. That is inclusive of RRF because that is a COVID related bill. Good news is other items such as extending the unemployment compensation or anything like that also won't be included in these bills. But RRF, we now need to push to be done once these two packages of bills, infrastructure and budget, are done or they fall apart. But either way, RRF is not going to be included in that, but we need to drive pressure to our congressional delegation to get that refunded. The biggest issue we have, and I've talked about this on a few webinars with a lot of you, is half the country wasn't as mitigated as all of you were. So we have pretty much half of the entire Congress saying, I don't know why we have to refund this. My restaurants are doing just fine. And so this isn't like P3. This isn't like it was in the past where the entire country was wrecked in varying degrees. We now have kind of a clear delineation between states that were wrecked, like us, and states that weren't. And that's really our struggle, which is why we're going to continue to push RRF. But our hurdle is getting the support we need and getting leadership to move a bill that includes that $48 billion that's going to be needed across the country to fund those restaurants that didn't get funding in the first round. EIDL, in the meantime, is open. You can apply up to $2 million. It's a streamlined process. You can use the EIDL for more things that you weren't able to use it before. It is a loan. It is not a forgivable loan. I've gotten a lot of questions of, will they make EIDL forgivable? And that is not something that's under discussion right now. But if the EIDL is a 30-year loan, it's a low interest rate. It's better than you're going to get from any bank. And while we all know you don't need another loan right now, if we can get RRF refunded, you could then use the RRF to pay off the EIDL in that situation. But they did expand that to allow all of you to access a bit more funding as you're going into the winter and working through all of those issues. So please, if you haven't looked into the EIDL, you should. It's probably your only funding mechanism available to you outside of the employee retention tax credit, which ends, like I said, as of right now, potentially the end of this month. It's really the only option you have right now for funding, because RRF is not something that's going to happen in the next week or two. Okay, let's go for the headache that happened a couple weeks ago when President Biden made an announcement as it pertains to vaccine mandates and testing. We don't have all of the information yet. I can tell you the information that we do have and the good and the bad and the ugly of it. In short, this is an emergency order. So essentially, it's something that the president is authorized to do. He's allowed to do it through OSHA because of an extreme threat. So they're essentially saying COVID is an extreme threat, and they can create this emergency rule. The emergency rule is not subject to feedback or changes. So once they come up with the rule, it is the rule for 6 months, and they won't make and accept any changes. They might make changes, but there won't be a comment period for that rule once it takes effect. And that will be in effect for 6 months, at which point the administration has to move forward with a permanent rule, which is where they have to accept feedback and make changes as needed to get that across the finish line. But we are looking at, once the guidance is out there, is 6 months of this in place. OSHA is going to be developing the guidance for all of this in conjunction with the Department of Labor. So they're going to be developing all of the guidance you're going to need for this. We expect that within the next week or two. So this has not taken effect yet. But like I said, once the guidance is out there, you have about a 30-day clock for this to be implemented and for the state portions of OSHA to develop their own guidance that can be stricter, but has to be the minimum of what the federal guidance is. Questions we have: 100 employees is the threshold for either mandating. You can either mandate vaccines, or those that are not vaccinated need to get tested every week. 100 employees is across your entire business. It is not per location. So if you have multiple locations, it's across all of them. It's not individual locations. If you have employees that are working remote, full-time remote, they do not count towards that 100-person count. So if you have 30 employees that are, or you have, let's say you have 70 employees working in your business and 29 that are working at home, this doesn't affect you. But what it could be affected is if OSHA says it's the entirety of your employees. So if you have 70 employees working at your business, 30 that are working remote, but they're saying it's everybody, that would trigger the 100 number for those 70 employees that are working in the business. Essentially, what will happen in terms of all of this is you will need to provide paid time off for employees to go get vaccinated. that's something we are expecting. We don't know what the definition of vaccinated is. We don't know if it's fully vaccinated. We don't know if it's one shot. We don't know if it's 2 weeks post-shot. We don't know how boosters are going to factor into this. A lot of unknowns that we don't know the answer to. One of the biggest questions that we have that we're still waiting for guidance on is if you have employees that are not vaccinated and they need to therefore get tested every week, who is paying for that test? And this is a gray area only because the penalties for you as an employer are up to $14,000 per violation, but we don't believe there's going to be any penalties for the employee. So if an employee says, I don't want to get vaccinated, and you say, well, then you need to go get a COVID test every week, and they say, no, I'm not paying for that, the burden could be on the employer to provide these COVID tests in terms of being vaccinated. So a lot of things that we still, like I said, don't know the answer for. Like I said, who pays for the testing? What type of testing is going to be valid? How are you going to verify those that have been vaccinated? Do you have to see their vaccine card? How do you verify the vaccine card is true and correct? What's the burden if it's not? All types of issues. Like I said, the biggest thing that we have right now is the fact that we don't have the guidance that we need, and we're still waiting for that. And the question that a lot of you are waiting for information on is the fact of there's lawsuits. We're already seeing lawsuits saying that this is not within the president's purview. Could there be an injunction that stops this from going into place? Yes, there can always be an injunction, but a gray area that we're still trying to work through is OSHA does have the authority to fine you and penalize you if you have an unsafe environment, despite this rule or regulation. And I think we all know that if there's a COVID outbreak, that is an unsafe environment. So even if a court says this is illegal, the president can't do it, OSHA could still come in and enforce some of these provisions because they could say that your business is unsafe. So like I said, we don't have all of the answers right now. As we get them, we will be doing, again, another in-depth webinar. It's bringing me back, like it's bringing my PTSD back of when we get new mitigation guidance from the governor, and we'd have to do an emergency webinar to go over it all with you. This will probably be something pretty similar as we get the information that you need if you have 100 employees or more, as it pertains, like I said, to a vaccine requirement or the testing mandate. So as we get that information, we will get it all out to you. But it is something that you should be prepared for. It is something that we think could be enforceable. And at the end of the day, you are, as a business with 100 or more employees, if this impacts you, you will need to have a policy in place. You're going to have to develop a policy. So if OSHA shows up, you can say, this is how I'm implementing this rule that you have, and we will help you through all of that. State update, they are in session as I'm speaking. I'm watching the PA House right now. The House and Senate did come back to session this week. The House came back on Monday, the Senate came back yesterday. It's a lot of like the first day of school or the first week of school. Everybody has their new outfits and they're complimenting each other on their haircuts, and they're not doing a lot other than that, other than holding a lot of press conferences and saying what they're going to do. But as I mentioned before, the following items that we expect to see the legislature deal with, whether you believe personally they need to or not, is they will be passing legislation not allowing the administration to have a mask mandate for children in schools. So they're going to pass legislation that reverts the right to make that decision back to the counties or back to the school boards. We're going to be seeing abortion legislation. We're going to be seeing the redistricting is going to be happening, election reform, election audit is going to be talked about. Basically every type of partisan issue you can think of is what the legislature is coming back and looking to deal with as they return this fall. What is not on their agenda? Unfortunately, similar to half of the states in Congress, we are still seeing some of our legislators say, you know, COVID's over, and while we have $5 billion to spend to help, you know, struggling industries help recover all of this, they haven't decided or discussed doing any of that yet. We are continuing to push. The Senate has not deigned to move House Bill 1154 this week. They have decided to sit on that for right now, but as we all know, going into this fall, going into winter, the ability to utilize outdoor seating and having cocktails to go is going to be really important. So please stay tuned as we continue to navigate the opportunities to get that back on the table for all of you. So that's something we're going to be working on. But as of this week and probably next week, it doesn't look like those are items the legislature is moving forward with right now. Another item, I forgot to add it, the 42 or 43 products heard around the world last week that came from the LCB. They did make an announcement that they are limiting a number of products for licensees and consumers. You're limited to only 2 bottles of products a day. If you like champagne, this probably impacts you. If your restaurant uses champagne, this probably impacts you. If you like the 1.75 liter bottles of Jack Daniels, if you like Don Julio or Patron, this impacts you. So it's about 42 or 43 products the LCB is capping. I love to blame the LCB just as much as the next guy, maybe more than anybody. But this really is a situation that is outside of their control. This is a supply chain issue. This is a COVID, not enough employees can't get what they need to make the bottles needed for these products issue. So the LCB had 2 choices, whether we agree with it or not. One was don't limit the supply and just say, have at it. And when we're out, you're out, or limit the supply to try and control and make sure that people that still need that product or want that product can get it, even if it's in limited quantities. This is going to get worse before it gets better. From what we're hearing stories that where the LCB is expecting 20,000 cases of some champagnes, they are getting 2,000, and that's it for the entire holiday season. So this is something that you're going to have to sub some products, replace some products going into the holidays, because this is a supply chain issue as it pertains to getting the sand needed for glass, as it pertains to getting products from Europe that is not going to go away quickly. So please think through that. We're continuing to talk with the LCB, but this is, like I said, not just a Pennsylvania issue. This is a national problem, and we're going to see this in every state. Going into this fall, like I said, the legislature is not doing much, but when they're ready to do more, we're going to be ready and waiting for them. So for my hoteliers on the call, if you have not completed a survey that we're doing as it pertains to tourism improvement districts, please complete that survey. We'll put a link to it in the chat for you. We really need to compile information from our hoteliers as it pertains to this legislative priority. PRLA has always said we won't pursue legislation unless our tourism partners and our hotel partners are on the same page. So it is key that we get feedback from our hoteliers on this legislation to determine next steps, if we need to make changes, or if this is an issue we need to work through a little bit more. So please, for my hoteliers, complete that survey if you haven't yet. I think we've only had about 20 people participate, and we need more. So please complete that survey. It won't take more than a few minutes. Local update. Mitigation is we're still holding steady. Case counts are increasing in some places, but they are not as high as they were a few weeks ago, and they are starting to level out a little bit. Allegheny County is not planning to pursue any mitigation at this time. County Executive Rich Fitzgerald has said that he's looking at a county employee vaccine mandate. He was urging employees to do it. He was having a testing requirement before. He's looking to potentially do a mandate, but we're not hearing anything else on the Allegheny County front as it pertains to mitigation. Philadelphia's mask mandate remains in place. They just did a press conference today at 10:30 with guidance as it pertains to COVID in schools, but are not planning any other further mitigation at this time. So while case counts are not great, the hospitals are not overwhelmed, and we aren't seeing any mitigation at the local level, and certainly not at the state level at this time. Philadelphia Philadelphia City Council is back in session, and they've started introducing bills so far. Nothing that hurts us, which is a nice breath of fresh air for us sometimes as it deals with City Council. But they have introduced a piece of legislation that would make that 15% cap on third-party delivery services. It would make it permanent. This was a cap that was put in place during COVID. since all of you were forced to do takeout and delivery. We certainly didn't think it would be fair for third-party delivery companies to charge you 40% for that. So a 15% cap was put into place, and Councilwoman Sherelle Parker is looking to make that cap permanent moving forward for our restaurants in the city of Philadelphia. Also, for my hotels within the city of Philadelphia, Philadelphia has, going back to that survey I just mentioned, a tourism improvement district within the city limits of Philadelphia. They're looking to increase that levy in the city of Philadelphia to potentially provide more support to their tourism partners and bringing conventions back to the city. So they need legislation for that. That legislation has been introduced. And Allegheny County, last week, County Council did unanimously pass paid sick leave legislation in Allegheny County. So if you are a business in Allegheny County, but not in the city of Pittsburgh, paid sick leave will be impacting you if you have 25 employees or more in the near future. It will take effect 90 days after the public notice of information is provided to businesses. So that will count, that will begin the 90-day clock for paid sick leave in Allegheny County. So please stay tuned. We will provide guidance. We have been dealing with paid sick leave and that legislation now for going on eight or 9 years. So we will be able to provide you all of the tools and resources you need if you're a business in Allegheny County and this impacts you. And we'll let you know once we get that 90-day clock going in terms of effective dates. I believe that is kind of where we are. Not a ton of updates this week, but we're getting back into it. John?
Thanks, Melissa. Nice job, as always. A few outings and events to announce. We have 3 golf outings coming up. 2 of them are at the chapter level, Brandywine chapter down near Philadelphia, and the Central Chapter Golf Outing, which is going to be held in Hershey, Pennsylvania. It's a beautiful time to play golf in Pennsylvania, and it's for a good cause. It's for the Educational Foundation and the Hospitality Assistance Relief of Pennsylvania, Response Pennsylvania. And then our annual golf tournament, statewide tournament for PRLA is next week on Tuesday. There still are some playing spots open, not a lot, but there's a few open. So at the, it's held in Bridgeville outside of Pittsburgh. It's a terrific event. And there's a lot of food and there's a lot of golf involved. And then it's followed by the Hops for Hospitality Beer Festival, which I'll talk about in a moment. So if you have a time to get over near Pittsburgh on Tuesday, please come to that. Find out about the 2 chapter outings on our website. And then in sponsorship with the Greater Philadelphia Hotel Association, Women in Hospitality, Philadelphia Golf Clinic and Happy Hour will be held on October 12th. You can find more out about that as well. Tomorrow we have the 9th in our series of roundtables around the state. We'll have 11 in total before we're done. This is where we meet with legislators from the different areas throughout the state. We have a great turnout. I think we have 8 legislators, senators and representatives coming tomorrow to Kalahari Resort. There is a few spots open if you want to attend that. It's free of charge. It's an opportunity for you to meet directly with elected officials. Again, tomorrow, 2 p.m., Kalahari Resort in the Pocono Mountains. By the way, the next legislative roundtable after that is the Bucksmont chapter, and then the last one, which isn't listed, is on November 30th in Brandywine. And we will have reached all of our legislators throughout the state by the time we're through those, making sure that they understand on a very upfront and personal level our legislative priorities. There's also a couple other events listed there, the Bucksmont chapter Happy Hour and the Western chapter meeting via Zoom, which is coming up. So you can find out more about those on our website. The next slide talks about the upcoming webinars. There's 2 more on the calendar with industry updates like today with Melissa on the 6th of October and the 22nd. And then one that you should really try to tune into if you're not going to the golf tournament on Tuesday is the Technomic operator recovery. Technomic, as you may know, is one of the foremost authorities on analyzing the restaurant industry in the country. And they're going to be talking about the new industry landscape. And you can, again, register for that on our website. We continue our effort to try to make vaccines, help promote vaccines for those that are struggling to get those, particularly in and around Philadelphia, through a grant from the William Penn Foundation. And in addition to that, we also are still focusing on helping industry people get testing where that's necessary. That's going to be more and more important with the upcoming legislation that Melissa talked about earlier. So that's important. You can find out more about that on our website as well. And then the Hops for Hospitality, which I mentioned, is being held in conjunction with the PRLA annual statewide golf outing on Tuesday. That will be, that's going to be a great event that's going to help raise money for our political action committee. We continue our Level Up campaign. We've completed the paid portion of it, but we're getting a lot of reach through social media. We've reached millions of people with this campaign about ours as an industry of opportunity and an industry of goodness. And thanks to all of those folks who work in the industry who have told their stories about what a great opportunity they've had by working in restaurants and hotels. And then I believe lastly, I want to again highlight the annual conference and awards gala, which will be held in Pittsburgh on November 8th and 9th. This is a terrific event. We have some great speakers lined up, including Meredith Elliott Powell, who's one of the foremost gurus on leadership in the country. Dane Wysocki, who will explain the importance of humor in the workplace. And then we're having an address by H&LA CEO Chip Rogers and EVP of Public Affairs Sean Kennedy, who has done so much for our industry in the last year, all there live and in person. We have a terrific awards gala dinner on Monday night and a luncheon on Monday afternoon and a breakfast on Tuesday. And all of those things are included in the price of $125, which is actually the below cost to PRLA. It costs PRLA about $250 to put this on. The board of PRLA voted to subsidize half your cost to attend this year in order to try to recognize the struggles that the industry has been through. So it'll be a great event, Monday, November 8th, Tuesday, November 9th. There's also committee meetings, our annual meeting of membership, and our annual board meeting too. So lots of good things going on. Hope you can get to Pittsburgh. It's at the beautiful historic Omni William Penn Hotel, downtown Pittsburgh. Hope to see you there. And then lastly, on the education front, we have training solutions, virtual experiences, and the Serve Safe Dining commitment. You can find out about all of these things on our website. And now we'll go back to Melissa. There's only, I think, a few questions there, Melissa, but have at it.
Okay, first question, do you have a link to the exact of Biden's new mandate? Lawyers, I think, can't fight this unless we have the original text of the mandate. The only executive orders I have seen have been as it pertains to federal contractors. I don't know if it's an executive order for what OSHA is going to be doing, or if OSHA is just developing its own emergency rule. So it might not be an executive order, and we're still waiting for that information from OSHA. But if you go onto the executive orders that have been posted, are those as it pertains to federal employees and federal contractors. So we do not have, like I said, we might not have an actual executive order or with the information pertaining the authority OSHA has until OSHA releases that information. And thank you, Steph, for including the TID legislation survey. An update on the drive-through proposal in Pittsburgh. So to that end, Pittsburgh City Council, actually Mayor Peduto, is pushing an initiative that would require essentially a survey to be done if you are a business within the city that wants to have drive-through. So essentially, it would require an impact study to be submitted for any individual company proposing a drive-through business in the city of Pittsburgh. That proposal has been submitted to the Planning Commission. They're planning to review it on September 28th. If you have a drive-through business in this city of Pittsburgh, we haven't heard from anyone with concerns about this. So please let us know if you do have concerns. From what we're hearing inside the city is that people aren't pushing back on this a lot. So if it is an issue, please reach out to Zach or I so we can work through some of those issues. But that meeting is on the 28th. And depending on how the Planning Commission rules, it could move through City Council pretty quickly. Let's see. An update on Philadelphia Streetery. Yes. So we do have an update. For those of you in the great city of Philadelphia, if you pay attention, which I know you all do, day in and day out, current legislation that allows for a relaxing of rules for streeteries and sidewalk cafes is set to expire on December 31st of this year. A huge thank you to Councilman Dom and so many members of council, because they have been working with us so closely over the summer to develop legislation that would allow streeteries and sidewalk cafes to continue forever under a new theme. So essentially, what will happen is you will no longer need to get your council member to introduce legislation to do a sidewalk cafe. They would be extended and made permanent. But with that, that legislation is expected to be introduced. I want to say it's going to be next week. I believe they're going to introduce it on September 30th during council. Some details of the bill: street areas will need to be movable. There will be a $200 fee to apply for a permanent streetery or sidewalk cafe license. You will have to, if you're making it permanent, you'll have to do a posting for 10 days, similar to those orange placards you need from the LCB. You will need to post that. So if there's any issues in the neighborhood, those can be vetted. And there will be very, very strict enforcement of these rules and regulations within the city of Philadelphia. So if they're made permanent, streets department, L&I will be enforcing this. So we will have more parameters once the legislation is ironed out. It's being drafted right now. But Philadelphia, the mayor's office, the government and council are committed to making this permanent, so you can continue to operate your streeteries and sidewalk cafes moving forward safely and responsibly. So please stay tuned for that. We are expecting legislation to be introduced next week, with a hearing to be held in October. We will need our restaurants in Philadelphia to engage and testify at that hearing. So please stay tuned as we get that information out to all of you. Is there any information on how the president's mandate might affect unionized employees? Our understanding is that unions are not exempt from the 100 employee requirement. That's how we understand it right now. There was not a carve out as far as we know, if you have a collective bargaining agreement. And of course, the president's executive order as it pertains to federal contractors, there isn't a carve out there either. So we will have, like I said, more information when OSHA releases a document that will probably be very long. But our understanding is that there isn't a carve out for that. Now, there are carve outs, if you have employees that can't get the vaccine, have certain religious issues for not getting the vaccine, which all would have to be documented, but we have not heard of a union carve out. Medical marijuana legislation. This is a problem for us with easy approval for recreational use and our drug testing. No testing standard of impairment, unlike alcohol, is the biggest issue. Bruce, I feel like, Bruce, you might have been watching Senate session this week, because they actually had a hearing on this issue. I want to say it was Monday of this week. So this is a big issue for our industry. And honestly, the problem that we have is the medical marijuana law says it's legal to have medical marijuana, but it doesn't provide any protections to employers that might have a policy against it, or might have certain jobs within their business that it's not safe as it pertains to testing or things like that. So there are discussions within the legislature to kind of create that guidance and legislate what employers can and can't do, what you have the ability to do as it affects unemployment or as it affects workers' comp, all of that. This is not an issue that's going to be solved within the next week or two, but it is an issue that they had a hearing on just this week to try and address, because we do recognize that this is a gray area, which is a scary place for any business to operate within. So please stay tuned. PRLA is following that bill. We support a bill that provides that clarification that you need, and we'll let you know as it moves forward. I think I got to the end. Okay.
Looks like that's it. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I guess we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
And hopefully
everyone.
we'll have a lot more information and guidance in a couple weeks, especially as it pertains to that OSHA stuff.
Bye.
Bye.